So the one-year trade agreement that promises a postponement of export controls on rare earth metals appears to have brought the two leaders to the middle ground for now. But can we call this an end to the trade war? For answers here in the Gyeongju studio, I'm joined by Professor Andrew Millard. Hello, Professor Millard.
Good evening. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And also joining us is our foreign affairs correspondent, Soo-young. Welcome, Soo-young.
Great to be here, Tammy.
So, Soo-young, I'd like to start with you. What did you make of the outcome of the Trump-Xi summit earlier today?
Well, this highly anticipated summit between Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, I would say it rather fell below expectations. Maybe because the US leader had, for days and days, he'd been talking about what a great deal he was going to reach with President Xi Jinping. But this summit appeared to fall slightly short of that, as they did take a step back from weeks and weeks of trade war escalation. But it was only really that. There wasn't really much of a breakthrough, but it was a temporary pause or an extension of their trade truce, where, of course, as Soo-young mentioned in her report just now, they made some deals on fentanyl, tariffs being halved, and also China resuming its purchase of soybeans. But these weren't actual fundamental solutions to the wider trade war. They were rather domestically oriented, I would say. They were hot button items, but not really core trade issues. So it really seemed entirely political, their meeting. None of the leaders, neither of the two leaders, had much to gain by further escalating the trade war, especially with President Trump facing the midterm elections in the US next year, and President Xi Jinping as well. He's looking to extend he's looking to go into the fourth term of him being in office. So they now have something to take back home with them. And of course, this being their first meeting since President Trump, he returned to office earlier this year in January. I would say it was more of a hello again kind of summit, build up to their later meetings, which will happen next year.
Maybe more than a hello, a strategically designed move for both leaders. Now, Professor Millard, then how would you evaluate the meeting between the leaders of the world's two largest economies? I mean, do you think it's the best that they were able to come up with?
So I think this was a very positive summit. So, I mean, we've been talking about this summit now for about a month. Will Xi come to Korea? Will Trump come to Korea? Will they have a meeting? So there's been a lot of speculation, a lot of talk. It's finally happened, and this has been a very positive first step, because for the past 8 or 9 months, there's been a lot of back and forth between China and the US on tariffs and other issues. So to have this meeting, to have them sit down together, shake hands, I think this is a very positive first step. I agree with Ms. O, maybe the substance wasn't fully there. So as Donald Trump said, it was a 12 out of 10. I personally disagree with that. I give it maybe 7 or 8 out of 10, because they do both have a lot of domestic issues, but this is also a very important issue for the global economy as well.
Exactly.
So to have this meeting, have some steps forward, potentially Donald Trump will go to China next April, and then Xi will go to the US afterwards. So they're starting to rebuild this relationship.
Right. I think the world wanted to see that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, then, Soo-young, I have to ask the ultimate question. Will the summit finally ease the trade tensions between US and China?
Well, I'm going to have to be the bad guy here and be a bit pessimistic, because this agreement on the rare minerals as well, China had initially threatened to impose export controls on the export of rare minerals that go into all the high-tech sort of technology that we see these days. And while it said that it would drop that trade measure, it's only going to last a year, and even President Trump, he acknowledged this by saying that they're going to have to renegotiate after a year. So I would say that this is just stage one of the Trump-Xi interaction. We're going to continue to see this trade war rage on. The battle for now is over, but there are going to be more battles. This first summit, held in Korea, a third country, is just going to be a lead up to their more perhaps intensive meetings next year, when President Trump is set to go to China, possibly in April, and Xi Jinping makes a reciprocal trip. So again, we see the US and China fundamentally, they're decoupling still. They're trying to reduce their reliance on each other when it comes to these very strategic industries and supplies are very critical, these substances that power everything from AI to ships and all these high-tech digital things that we take for granted these days. So I would say that they have stepped back for now, but in the long run, are they going to really narrow their differences? Are they fundamentally going to resolve their trade war? That's a very tough question to answer, and as President Trump likes to say, we'll just have to wait and see.
That is a very big homework for the two leaders. Now, I have to turn to Professor Millard for this question. I have to ask on behalf of our viewers, then who gave in more, Trump or Xi? What's your take on it?
Oh, this is a good question. And to be honest, right now, there's no answer. This is a very early stage. So we have the agreement. It's not been signed. So this is a very important thing to remember. Everything can change. Until everything is signed and put in paper, in writing, it can still change. And we know Donald Trump, he's highly unpredictable. It could possibly change any minute, depending on what happens. But like I said, there's no real clear winner. Both sides have conceded, both have gained. So in terms of China, they've really gained sort of access to some of these sort of more advanced chips coming from America, not the most advanced, the Blackwell chip it's called, but they have gained more access to those chips. They have other advantages too. The US, basically agriculture, this has been a very big issue for American farmers. So soybeans are now going to be exported to China. They talk about tremendous amounts. How much is this tremendous amount? So again, the clarity right now is not there. The details we just don't have. So until we get this in paper, until we start learning more, we aren't going to know. Now, Donald Trump was very quick to be on social media as soon as the meeting finished and talking about all the gains that he's made. China was a little bit more relaxed, but they're slowly starting to give us more information. It's going to take a little while to really fully understand.
You know, it is a verbal agreement, and still details do have to be fine-tuned. Now, Soo-young, then how has South Korea been affected by this ongoing, the U.S.-China trade war? Do give us a recap.
Well, South Korea being a highly trade-dependent nation, it's been very vulnerable to all the ups and downs of the US-China trade war. And so if we just focus on this month alone in October, well, since September actually, when trade tensions began escalating again between Washington and Beijing, Korea's tech firms were seriously unnerved because they overly depend on China's supplies of rare minerals and rare earth supplies. And actually, Korea, according to the Korea Institute for Economic Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, South Korea in 2018, around 17.3% of its critical mineral supplies came from China, but that rose sharply in 2023 to 31.7%, and that actually fell last year to around 24.2%, but that's still 1/4 of our critical minerals. And compared to the US, we are 5 times more dependent than them on China's critical mineral supplies, and 3 times more when it comes to that of the European Union. So for South Korean firms, it's been a very scary time for them this past month, and now it's going to be a bit. They're now going to be, breathing a sigh of relief. But again, that's just for 1 year, right? There's going to be renegotiations. So fundamentally, they're going to need some long-term solutions for this.
I asked this question because President Lee is set to meet with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on Saturday in 2 days. What does this Trump-Xi meeting mean for President Lee then?
Well, I would say that it's rather good news for President Lee because as US-China trade tensions have, for now, dissipated slightly, it gives President Xi less of a reason to ramp up pressure on South Korea. I mean, Beijing last month 2 weeks ago, decided to impose sanctions on 5 subsidiaries of Hana Ocean, which of course is helping America's project to rebuild its shipbuilding industry, right? And this was clearly a very geopolitical move by China in its great power rivalry with China, because ships, the US hegemony really comes from its naval power, and China's really competing with that. So to see South Korea help the US, that's something that Beijing clearly couldn't condone. So as US-China tensions were rising, they decided to sanction these companies, and that's something I think President Yi certainly would raise with Beijing. I believe our foreign minister already has, and he'll have a greater kind of leverage to be able to bring this to the table, among other trade issues too, of course, because Beijing's economic sanctions on Korea, they don't just extend to shipbuilding for now, but since 2017, after South Korea decided to install US missile defense systems on the Korean Peninsula, yes, some economic and also cultural sanctions on Korean firms have been continuing to this day. So those are some key issues that President Yi will have to raise. And since US-China tensions for now have been lowered, he can actually focus on these South Korea-China issues.
Right. On top of the cultural ban, the THAAD, and other issues, among other issues, what else is at stake? Professor Millard, how do you expect the meeting to turn out on Saturday between President Lee Jae-myung and Chinese President Xi Jinping?
So I think there's going to be a lot at stake for Korea here. So it's definitely going to be a test for Lee Jae-myung. He's obviously already finished his meeting with the US president. That went very positively. So now he has to sort of swing and sort of change direction now towards China, make sure that he maintains a very positive relationship with China, which I think he's already been doing very well. There's again going to be several issues. Security is going to be one of the top issues, but also maintaining those economic relations, I think really is going to be the key. And also potentially it could be brought up that there has been a little bit of anti-Chinese sentiment in Korea. So if that comes up, how he sort of deals with that diplomatically, I think that'll be quite a big test for him.
Saturday is going to be an interesting day.
It's going to be very interesting for sure.
All right, Professor Millard, thank you so much for coming in tonight. We appreciate your insight and your time.
Thank you.
And also our foreign affairs correspondent, Soo-young, thank you so much for coming in and for your coverage.
Thanks very much for inviting me, Tammy.